something that kind of has to do with these playoff matchups, and that's the whole strength of schedule argument. There's been a lot of talk about that. It seems like when you talk about any team that isn't, uh, Alabama,
Or
Georgia,
yeah,
an SEC team, it's all, well, they haven't played anybody.
right.
Um, and yeah, it just becomes a bit of a funny situation. We started off in the beginning. I mean, we saw teams like Michigan play like literally nobodies,
Yeah,
and so I don't really mind that argument, especially that early when you play only three
you
teams and
play.
they're
Yeah,
literally all
exactly.
nobodies. But it gets to the point where, especially if you're in a Power Five conference, you're playing
You're
games. And the
playing.
problem
Yeah,
with it is, sure, the SEC is maybe a little bit more stacked, or decently more stacked than these other Power Five conferences, the Big Ten, following shortly behind them. But if you're one of the top teams, if you are Ohio State, if you are Clemson, if you are, the Oregon of the Pac-12, or the problem is there's only a handful of teams that are in your conference that
right.
are good at any year. So it's hard to,
It's hard to measure it
yeah,
really
it's hard to measure.
because
You can only beat who you have in front of you. And if you are one of the good teams, you can't play yourself. So you have already eliminated one from your schedule,
yeah,
right? Like if you're Ohio State and you're good every year, okay,
the only real competition you have is like Michigan,
if
Penn
they're good,
State, if
yeah.
they're good,
Yeah.
and maybe Michigan State, depending on how they are.
Yeah, and obviously we see it change from year to year, but yeah, it's a tough thing. Too many people try to say that people haven't played anyone yet, but I think one of the best examples of why it doesn't matter is Clemson. Like Clemson over the years, they've ran through that ACC schedule. They haven't really played the toughest competition,
Yeah,
but we've seen them be able to go and beat
beat the
teams like
best of the
Bama
best.
and
Yeah,
and the best of the best to win national championships.
Ohio State, Bama, they've beat in the
Right. So
playoffs.
there,
So
there's
it's
there's
like,
nobody that they haven't beaten on the way there.
yeah,
We seen teams like Ohio State do it. We seen Ohio State when they won that first playoff national championship. They have to go through Bam. I mean, pretty much if you look at over the years for the the recent past,
right.
everybody, if you win the national championship, you have to go through Bama at some
Yeah,
point. Nobody has not
gone
beaten
through
Bama
them.
to beat them. So yeah, and look, this is why we have the playoff now, anyways, right?
Yeah,
Four
I think the
teams get to get
playoffs
in,
gets
and
to determine that a lot more.
yeah,
So
and it should be, and look, over the years, right? All we hear is about expansion at this point. What people think is good or bad, either way, it's happening.
right.
I guess the only thing to figure out is just the details. If it's going to be 8 teams, if it's going to be 12 teams, if it's going to be another number. But as that unfolds, this whole playing people argument really gets
It
thrown out
really,
the
yeah, it
window.
gets thrown out the window, and then the meaningful undefeated season gets thrown out the window because
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, all right, you can possibly get a team that has two losses in there, and they can make a deep run in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs, and it
Right.
makes the playoffs a little bit more extended. So it's kind of like, I personally, I would like to see like a eight team playoff. I feel like anything bigger than that kind of just diminishes the whole meaningful
Mm-hmm.
play or regular season games. I think that's why college football is so great, is because we're able to see these situations where it's like you have to win out, and if you have one loss, it's like, all right, from that point on you have to be undefeated, and it puts so much pressure on programs to do well. But again, it's like every game matters
Yeah,
so
and,
much
and
more.
that's why it's the greatest regular season in
Yeah,
in sports. Like you see, I mean, you won't see anywhere else people storming the fields for regular season games.
right.
I mean, there's nobody matches that level of excitement,
No.
and that amount of just chasing perfection.
Mm.
However, that is, whether it's keeping no losses or if you have one loss to stay
Just to
one
win
loss
out.
to win
Yeah.
out and be in contention for that national championship. So, yeah, definitely. definitely a lot of things going on with that that discussion. But as we said, once these playoffs expand, it would be nice to not have people talking, in October, November. Oh, but they haven't played anyone. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, we all know who's in the
At the end
conferences
of
at this point.
yeah,
But
exactly.
it'll shake out how it shakes out.